I was inspired to found Build My SOP because I was a manager running these facilities for many years, and the Achilles heel I've seen in every business that I've entered has always been their standard operating procedures and their employee training. Build My SOP offers document management, learning management, and task management for our business owners and our managers. We're a really easy platform to be able to navigate and to be able to track and keep revisions of all of the changes that you've made within the years of your facility being open. And the plants don't stop growing and retail stores don't stop selling. And so it's very challenging to keep up with this when you're also having to get product out of the door at the end of the day. People should sign up with Build My SOP right now because regulations are in place right now. Regulations are going to be in place in the future, and things are going to be evolving and changing as long as this industry is here. We're really a vendor that people can trust. We're helping people with their bottom line, creating homogenized products, creating employee accountability, and just helping them with that peace of mind at the end of the day. Hello, good afternoon. This is Ask the Regulator. We're on season 1, episode 3. Today we are discussing creating a responsible practice. And so we're just discussing the rules and regulations of your city and state, and owner responsibilities, right? Our responsibilities to know those rules and regulations. I am Kady Cravens, founder and CEO at buildmysop.com. Joined with me is our co-host, the former regulator from the Marijuana Colorado Enforcement Division, Mr. Tom Mohan, and our special guest today, Miss Kristen Yoder. She's been featured in Vanity Fair, Forbes, USA Today, and named one of the Marijuana Venture magazine's 40 Under 40 Rising Stars of Cannabis. She's also the owner of Cynical Stoner, which I am a customer of. I absolutely love your product, Kristen. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I will let Kristen tell you guys a little bit about herself.
So I've been in the Los Angeles cannabis industry since 2005, at which time I managed the first dispensary in the city of LA for 5 years, followed by 2 years of learning how to grow indoor, outdoor, and realizing that I am not cut out for that work, which is why, like, mad respect to the growers. We owe them so much more than they get. So I grew for 2 years. Then I did product development, operation management, supply chain management for one of the largest edible companies in California for 3 years. And then I went to the testing lab that I used while I was at the edible company. They were the most consistent. And when it comes to formulating, you need a lab that you can trust when it comes to the numbers, or you can't formulate your products correctly. And that's kind of important. So I went to work with them as a project manager for a year. And that's when I learned about terpenes and that indica sativa is bullshit. And then that just blew my mind. So then I'm like, oh, I have to atone for my sins of telling people that for 5 years. Like, I've always considered myself a bastion of truth. And I was misled, and I misled many. So I started teaching terpene classes in 2016. And I kept doing that up till now, but I added a twist to it, which is like intro to terpenes plus how to detect bullshit in cannabis marketing, because it's so full of bullshit. And then I started the Cannabis Detector podcast in 2018 because I saw a lot of crazy things going on that, like, you'll never hear about in the news. You don't hear about how much shit happens, and I felt like
other industries either.
Yeah, I had to say something. I couldn't help it, and so I made a podcast about it. And now I'm about to start my 4th season, doing a legalization guide, like how every state fucks up the same ways, even though they say they learned from their predecessors. And I find that curious, and something that needs to be dealt with. But if no one ever talks about it, it doesn't get handled, which is the point of the media, is to shine a light on things that need to be addressed. So I did that. And then I was a strategic advisor. But honestly, like my sweet spot was entrepreneurs in the idea phase. Because I can stop them from making expensive mistakes. Like there's no bankruptcy when you touch the plants. There's a lot of things people just don't know. But the problem is most people, like almost all of them, do not have viable plans. They just had this idea for a weed brand, and that's not good enough. And so, well, there's no return business in that case, is there? So I started Cynical Stoner, which was like I say witty things, and people are like, you should put that on a sticker. So I kept a list of them, and then I put them on t-shirts, and people love them and it makes me happy. So like now that's been my focus, is my snarky clothing and my podcast.
Well, I got the full spectrum bitch necklace, and I love it. I got it for my best friend too, and I love the sativa indica's lazy marketing. I
Yeah.
found you through your podcast, and I was like, oh my gosh, because I'm known as kind of in Colorado the Wicked Witch of the weed, and I was like, I found someone who aligns with me because there is a lot of BS in this industry. I find that the owners, a lot of owner operators fall short and are really depriving their employees of the tools that they need, the education they need, the resources they need to perform at their highest level. And like you said, a lot of these owner operators just are like, it'd be fun to grow weed, not knowing that that's the hardest thing I've ever done. I'm much like you. I could care less if I grow another cannabis plant. I love the plant. I'm a consumer, but that is the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, is running a grow, and
Yeah,
harvest teams and all of that stuff.
totally. I mean, well, the way we met, that we actually started talking, is because I wanted to do a mini series for my podcast about the bullshit that women deal with in the cannabis industry specifically. And it ended up like triggering all my traumatic experiences. Like I wasn't always a cynical, well, yeah, I kind of was always a cynical stoner, but I wasn't like traumatized yet. I mean, if you Google Kristen Yoder cannabis on the first page of the search, Weed Week did a podcast about me, and they titled it "Who Hurt Kristen Yoder?" And their search query, it's like all caps, like "What did y'all do to Kristen Yoder?" or something like that. And they had a video of me when I was a bud tender, like over a decade ago, and I was like happy and whatever, and then they cut to me then, and I was like bordering my third burnout and just like a curmudgeon whatever, and I recognized like, dude, this sucks, and I can't keep just focusing on the bullshit without finding solutions. Like
Right.
I need to be actively doing something to change something, otherwise it's just too depressing.
Well, and
So
I've seen so many amazing managers leave positions and opportunities because of that exact scenario.
yeah.
They're just burnt out. They're wearing way too many hats. They're not given the tools that they need. They're not being backed up by their managers. I can't tell you how many dispensaries I operated, and if the owner is going and saying the opposite of what I do, or they're saying, "Oh no, it's okay," like don't listen to Kady. It's like, I'm managing these employees. I need them to have respect for me and fall in line with the culture I'm creating.
Yeah.
And if you don't have the owners, if they don't have your back on that, no one's going to take you seriously. And I've seen that in almost every facility I've walked into, where the managers are just really struggling with that. And Tom, I'm going to let Tom go ahead and introduce himself, and he's seen it all.
Yeah, and I'm gonna put a different perspective on it. So, by the way, I'm Tom Mohan. Worked 30 years in public safety as a paramedic, as a police officer. Most recently, I did 7 years with Marijuana Enforcement Division in Colorado. So I got to see a lot of business owners and talk of a lot of that side of it. So when I started out in 2014, when Rec just came on with Colorado, and kind of watching it then, just like you said, Kady, like the attitude was, the business owners was kind of like the back street, drug deal kind of thing, attitude of, let's just sell the weed and make the money. And it's changed from then, but you still have a lot of that, that kind of
basement mentality. I call it basement mentality.
yeah. And that's, and I totally saw that back in 2014 and 15. It's gotten a lot less now. It's getting better to where owners are actually taking accountability and giving and empowering their managers to hopefully make that culture. Because like you said, all the ones that you've gone into, all these places, I would hope that they start getting some retention and some ownership and accountability with everything that they've got in their business, because it's a legitimate business. It's not a backwards, back.
It's a regulated business. It's
I mean,
Exactly.
yeah, it's beyond.
regulated business, and the regulations, especially, I mean, compared to alcohol and other things, I just feel like it's so much more, strict in the cannabis sector. But we're following the rules so we can play the game, so we can grow the weed, so we can sell the weed. And the more responsible practices that we create, the more power we give the plant. And that's why I'm here at the end of the day. And I will agree with you, Tom, that I've seen a lot of maturity in the industry in the last few years. And I'm grateful for that. We work with a lot of owner operators, especially with our initial customization for our SOPs. Well, we'll go in and we'll figure out the rules and regulations for their municipality and for their state and make sure all of their in-house practices are mirroring those rules and regulations. But we do let them know it is your responsibility as the owner to know the rules and the regulations of your city and state.
I think that it's interesting that, like, if it isn't evident to business owners, I don't know, every state is different too. But like in California, not only did you have to have the location first, you had to have it compliant before you could even apply, which is no guarantee that you get a license at all. And then the city council is like, we're going to put a pause on this program for like a year. And you just pay a lease for a building and you do all this construction with no guarantees. But one of the things I thought was really interesting with California is they made every company have like a full-fledged risk. Like, if this happens, this is what I do. Like, they had to think of all these things. And I've never heard of that in any startup. No, what business has to actually think that far ahead and be that regulated? Like, I just feel like if they don't get it in the beginning through the process that this is a commitment that is far beyond selling weed, they learn quickly and like disappear, hopefully, I don't think that you can be blowing everything off for very long before it becomes too costly to continue. Because doesn't Colorado have like insane fines for MED compliance? Because that's another thing is you guys have training for employees, right? But California doesn't require any training for the employees, right?
So they have the RVP, the Responsible Vendor Training. They have that program that, and it's required. I think it's in the first 90 days, Tom, that a bud tender has to receive that training.
So in Colorado, you don't have to have it. It's recommended that you get it. But normally, once you have a violation, that is part of the stipulation in the agreement that you have, is that everybody's going to be trained in that. And you should have that before you even set foot, and checking IDs or anything like that.
Well, and that's where I think the states are really falling short, because we have responsible vendor training to sell alcohol. And you have to have that card before you can even step behind a bar or pass a wine glass to somebody or anything like that. And and the state's able to oversee that because they conduct the trainings and they're able to make sure that all of the content is, the same. And they don't do that for cannabis. And I think they're really falling short, because they should be the ones overseeing that training and it should be required. I don't understand the difference.
I agree.
Yeah.
But you always think about the fines of not doing something right and what is going to cost to the business. I think there's a lot more cost in what you're losing in the business. Kady and I were talking about one place that didn't have any SOPs, and they were losing thousands upon thousands of dollars, thousands of grams of concentrates out the door because they had no way of actually tracking it.
And training employees is expensive. There's a huge turnover rate in this industry.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that's expensive, right? Creating a compliant culture, that's something we're going to talk about too. It's a lot easier to start with a very strict compliant culture than to go in and try to shift everybody's mindset after they've been operating, with a really lax culture for the last 2 or 3 years. And you're all of a sudden everybody's enemy. And it's like, I worked as a compliance director for years and years. And it's like, don't you understand? I'm securing your job right now. I'm fighting for you and your safety and for your salary for not just this year, but the years to come. That's my responsibility, is to keep this facility open and to keep you employed. I'm not your enemy. I'm your friend.
Yeah, I don't think people understand the cannabis industry is not fun. It's just not. It's not. It's like really regulated. And a lot of the business owners aren't that great of people to work for. And the pay isn't always that good either, because there's so many people competing for jobs that they don't have to pay very well to get talent. And I think it's just unfortunate. I did an episode, Why Does It Usually Suck to Work in Cannabis? Because people are so excited and they have like good experiences with cannabis, or they're medical users, and all they want to do is like spend that time with other people and fawn over the plant, and and it's not like that unless you're a bud tender at a good shop where they actually even care about the bud tenders. It's really a shame, because so many good people get crushed. And that's why I created my podcast, was to warn people, like, lower your expectations greatly. Like, you will probably take a pay cut, and it's a startup environment, so it's going to be chaotic. And if you expect everyone to be on time all the time and reply to things all the time, like, you're going to lose your freaking mind within 6 months, and it's just unfortunate that we don't have to reinvent the wheel on how to run a business. SOPs are not new. Like, their company culture, the examination of it and studies of how important it is, none of that's new. Organizational management, these are not new, but everything seems to take this industry so much longer. And I don't get it. It's like, it doesn't have to be that hard, guys. And SOPs, the best thing is once you hand it to someone and you teach them and they say that they learned it, you have something to hold them accountable to and be like, yo, it's right here. Like, it's literally written down. Why didn't you do it? And without that, Lauren, she's funny. Without those, like, you have a hard time holding accountability, and that's huge as well.
But the employees can now hold the owners and managers accountable too.
Yeah.
Because they're like, well, this is how you showed me to do it, and I did it right. So it works both ways, right? It's clear communication. I had to look at myself in the mirror one day, and I was like, are you really this stressed out right now about helping someone smoke a joint? This seems counterproductive. Like, is my sanity worth this person smoking a joint? And the answer was no. It definitely wasn't.
Yeah.
So yeah, creating a compliant culture to begin with. The owner operators, no, don't go smoke weed with your employees in the parking lot. It's completely inappropriate. You don't need to be consuming with your employees. You just don't. If you do have a employee sample type of program in place, you need to make sure that that's implemented in a way that's going to protect you, your business, and your employees, right? We're not going to send our employees home with more than an ounce in their car if they're not allowed to carry more than an ounce. Just a lot of things to think about with all of that. And that's where creating those SOPs and training your employees fully, being consistent and creating structure and clarity can save your business and save their sanity.
Yeah.
And money.
And money. And that's what it all comes down to.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think that's why the fines have to be as big as they have to hurt. It has to hurt. I swear to God, the only way the industry will ever have true accountability is through financial penalties. That's it. And I feel the same way about, like, the state of California allowed in Prop 64 cities and counties the right to opt out of regulating cannabis. In my opinion, that's so stupid, because they created like 2/3 of the state was like a cannabis desert, and then they had to fight for delivery or whatever. I think the fix would be that any city or county that wants to opt out of regulating cannabis is essentially admitting that they are allowing an illicit industry, because they're not doing their job. Not only are they not getting tax revenue, they're costing the state in enforcement. I mean, in Riverside, They have the National Guard coming in every freaking week in Anza. Like, and you know what? They could have just licensed the growers, but when you don't even offer a pathway to legitimacy, it makes this crazy situation happen. And my solution is any city that opts out, then they have to pay in tax fines the amount of money they will cost the state in allowing an illicit industry in their community instead of just regulating it. Regulate it, tax it, get your money, get control of it. But if you just are like, nah, we don't want to do that, it's not going to go away. It doesn't go
The
away.
reality is their constituents voted for legal cannabis, and you are robbing you're robbing the people who live in these communities if they voted for legal cannabis. It's
Well,
not.
If they had
and
to
if they
pay
think that
tax.
they're not using it in that community, just like you said, it's the tax money they're losing.
I've tried to tell people this who are like, oh, now everyone's going to be smoking weed and it's going to smell like weed everywhere. The people who were smoking weed have been smoking weed.
I mean, has anyone been to Gilroy?
How many people that they knew were consumers before it went legal in New Mexico? And now their friends are able to talk about it without feeling like shame, for using plant medicine.
Yeah, the fact that we're so comfortable with alcohol in our culture and TV, like all these moms drink wine and everyone celebrates with a beer and watches the game. Like, it's such a part of our culture. Like, if anyone drinks or takes anything to shift their consciousness, they have zero right to judge anyone on anything. And that goes for weed smokers to drinkers. Doesn't matter. You don't get to judge other people's substances or whatever. I think it's so stupid that we still have, though I see it changing in the media too, like TV shows. I swear for a couple years, every stoner show is based in Venice. And I see it coming into the media more, but there's still such a stigma on cannabis use that
especially for moms.
makes no sense.
Especially for moms.
Y'all need it. Yeah.
I need it more than any of you. Just kidding.
No, for real though. I mean, I think how many parents would be so much better off, if they just could chill a little bit, their kids would be funnier, maybe.
Maybe.
I don't know.
Well, one thing that I see a lot of owner operators lacking in is defining working relationships and defining clear paths of communication, right? So this is your boss. This is who you communicate with. If they need to communicate about an issue between the two of you, they will communicate that to me, or we'll set up a session between the three of us. But you don't get to just not talk to your boss before you talk to me. Or, having other people. And I've had this in a lot of places I've gone where maybe I have a male who's working in the same position. We're both directors. And all of a sudden I'm the problem. And, there's a lot of communication between the owner and this other director. And I'm kind of out of the loop because and this other director who's at the same level as me is expecting me to report to him. That's not my job. You're not my boss. We're at the same level here. And so I got punished because I was doing my job correctly. And I wasn't letting this guy try to corner me and bully me. And I got punished for that. And so I've seen a lot of that in people not defining the working relationships.
Yeah, I discovered RACI charts. Are you familiar with those? It's RACI, and it stands for Responsible, Accountable, Consult. I forget what the last one is, but it was like in every startup, people had so many hats that no one was specifically accountable for a lot of things that someone needed to be accountable. And because no one knew whose job it was, they didn't do it. And they didn't go to anyone because who do they go to? And I think it's a very big problem with employees in the beginning is they don't want to rock the boat by seeming like they don't know what's going on. And if they don't know, they don't do anything. They just drop it. It doesn't get handled. And so it's important for a company, for me especially, to have a mission that everyone who gets a job knows what their role does. Who is their management? Like, how are they a part of a bigger thing? Like, it helps to understand the role you play and who you need to go to. Without that, things stop. They stop. It's crazy.
Just like with the communication side of things, if you don't have a defined, SOP to know what you're supposed to be doing, just like you said, okay, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I'll just stand here and nothing gets done.
Yeah.
So that's why you got to have that clear path of communications, a clear SOP, know what your job is, what to do. And if you have questions, that's what the SOP is there for.
But then also expecting those working relationships, like respecting the path and the communication. I've seen and a lot of people wear a lot of different hats. Like you said, Kristen, these are a lot of startups. They're, it's hard. I do provide a lot of my clients employee responsibilities, and I'll let them know as they're getting started, you might, or your employees might be wearing multiple hats and carrying, but these are really separate jobs. And as you guys grow, you need to take, maybe they're wearing 3 hats at the beginning. You need to start taking the hats and finding other people to wear those hats as you guys grow. Because you can only take so much.
Yeah, for sure. Totally. And I think this is another thing. I don't know if this is like the next topic, but management training is really important when you are recruiting, or not recruiting, but when you're giving people raises or like giving them a better position or a higher position based on tenure alone. That does not give them any advantage to going from being peers to being a supervisor. There's so much to management. Number one being communication. I had no idea. I took online management courses. There's like 16 touch points in a conversation, and everyone hears and like operates differently. There's different learning styles. There's all these ways to approach things in a conflictual way, and like, just, these are not skills that are inherent. These need to be taught. And I feel that when you're just going to give someone a job and not give them the training to help them, and then not back them up when they want to step up to their role and manage something, like that's what happened with me. I went from supply chain product development to operations management because I was already working with every department. But people kept going like above me to the owner, and like nothing gets done in that sense because he's so overwhelmed. And I kept saying like, yo, talk to me and I'll stay on him, but I don't even know what you're doing. Like, how can I help? And the other issue was everyone complained and no one had solutions. And I'm like, from here on out, if there's a problem, you have to fill out this form, which is, what is the problem? And what do you think we can do to solve it? And no one fucking filled out the form ever. And they
just complained all the time.
Part too. Well, a lot of them quit because it was a toxic ass workplace. I was trying to fix, but again, when you don't have the owner backing you up, you can't win.
Don't take you seriously.
And then it kills you inside. I mean, I don't think I ever fully recovered from any of my burnouts that I've been through. And I've been through 3 like clinically substantial burnouts. I don't think you ever get all of yourself back from them. And that's why it's so important for people to understand no fucking job is worth it. None at all, dude. You know?
I'm still recovering from the situation I encountered last year in Detroit, where somebody moved me across country and didn't pay me for 3 months and wanted to pay me in all cash. And that was also very toxic. And I left. He was like, well, let's sit down and renegotiate this. I'm like, I just moved from literally across the country to come and assist you because you begged me to. And I have a signed document that this is my salary and this is month 3 and I am barely able to pay my rent now. And I'm not going to sit in a room with you so you can bully me, gaslight me, and try to manipulate me into something else. These were the agreed upon terms. And if these are not this is not what's happening, I'm not participating. No, we're not going to sit in a room so you can renegotiate with me in my 3rd month on the job. That's just, and that cost me at least $20,000.
I'm curious. You're smart. I'm smart. I've been taken advantage of still, even though I don't trust anyone, I've still been fucked over. Like after a month, what was your thinking? You know,
I
after 2 months, what was your thinking?
I was already there. You know,
Yeah.
he had set up meetings for me to talk to CPAs and other things, and it seemed like he wanted to get legitimate. My final straw was when he took his girlfriend to Puerto Rico, and I hadn't gotten paid, and I was still waiting 3 weeks not getting paid, and that I was done.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, so you don't have money to pay your employees, and this guy was spending money frivolously on things that didn't matter, like a giant $40,000 sign in the garage that people trimmed in.
Oh my
Like,
God.
but you don't have money to pay me the salary that you offered me. I told him I would never work for another owner operator again in the space. I'm very happy working on my own.
Yeah.
And yeah, I am smart, but he was good. He was good, but I was already out there and I was committed. I had made the move. I moved my 3-year-old daughter. I
Yeah.
changed schools for her. So I really tried to give it my all. And at some point you've got to draw your boundary
I
lines and
think
understand what those are.
like that's an important point to make, and that's why I wanted to hear. It's like I give my all to projects. I came across a quote when I first went out on my own that said, if you don't build your dreams, someone will hire you to build theirs. And I felt like all I've done is build other people's dreams, and I left fucking empty and I had nothing to show for it, while their dreams are fucking great. And if I'm going to do that, I'm not doing it for anyone else but myself. Like, I feel like I just can never be employed again because I cannot be in that situation where I need to be paid my value or fuck you, you know? And like, that sucks. I don't want to see a whole generation of happy, nice people get turned into cynical stoners from their cannabis industry experience, you know? Because it only takes 6 months. I swear to God. Like, it doesn't take long to get jaded after a while, you know? What can we do?
Well, I think to Tom's
Really
point, it is
upsetting.
getting better. I did have the opportunity to work for a wonderful company that had a corporate background. And it's funny because all these people are like, stick it to the man. Like, we don't need, but like corporations
Know
have
how to do
structure
business.
and they know how to conduct business and they know how to, raise their profit margins. And there's clarity and there's structure in there. And it was the best job I had in the industry because it was run like a corporation. Like this is a real business. We're not just like growing weed out in the forest.
Yeah, we're not dreamers.
Yeah, and I think that's where, starting way back in 2014, the Wild West time frames, you had everybody getting a license. Now you're starting to get more businesses that have structure, that have that ownership and accountability. So hopefully it's getting better to where you don't get burnt out in that 6 months.
It is. And, with that said, with the maturity in the relationship, a lot more, there's been a lot more tools that have been developed.
Mm-hmm.
So, it is the owner's responsibility also to give employees the tools they need to exceed, have confidence, and perform at their highest potential. That's what I want to do as an employer. I want to make sure everyone has everything they need to perform at their highest level. That is my job as the CEO. And it's every single owner's job. And I think a lot of people fall short of that because they are overwhelmed or they don't know. But now that we're, it's the industry is not in its, infancy anymore. It's still very young. There are more tools like Build My SOP out there that can really give your managers and operators the strength that they need to carry on.
Yeah, training is essential at every juncture. And I know there are several good companies that have an onboarding program, and then they have like every couple months you take some more classes or whatever, or you incentivize learning. The best managers I've ever had asked me what I wanted to do in the future. Like, they invested in me. They found out what I wanted to do. They like actually tried to make it like a place you want to be. And I don't think it's not fucking rocket science to invest in your employees simply by communicating with them and checking in and being like, hey, how are you doing? Like, how are things going? Is there anything I can help you with? You know, like, just just caring, but also being available and not being scary or moody. That helps. Because there's a lot of times it's like you work for people and you're like, bro, what mood is he in today? Like, all right, I'm not going to bring anything up. Like, I'll talk to him tomorrow. You know, that's not conducive either.
Well, I think that's like the review process, right? Your quarterly, your 90-day reviews, like that's really important because a lot of these employees don't get a chance to sit down face to face with the owners very often. And they feel very overlooked and kind of just like what's the point of me being here? But giving those employees that attention, just a 30-minute conversation, going through their reviews. We have an incident write-up section in Build My SOP. So you can record incidents, you can record write-ups, and you can record commendations because we want to talk about the positive things too. So if my bartender has an awesome review on Yelp, I'm going to create a commendation and put that in there. And then when I sit down for their 90-day review, I'm going to pull up all of my reports. I'm going to see every single manager's experience with this employee. And I'm going to be able to talk about the good and the areas that we can work on and where I can see them excel.
Yeah.
Yep. If you give your employees some ownership in this, I think they excel a lot more. That's why those commendations are a great tool to have in there. Hey, you did a good job. Let's make sure that you're, recognized for that.
Totally. Yeah, there's not enough praise. It's like that picture of the kitten hanging from the branch that's like, when I mess up, it's all you remember, but when I do something good, no one remembers or something like that. Oh no, it is hang in there. Okay, never mind. This is
I was at the book fairs. I know that poster.
I'm thinking of the puppy poster.
Okay.
Like sad dog eyes. It's like, how come no one remembers when I'm good, only remembers when I do bad things or whatever? I think that's why even when I look at reviews, it's like the 5s and the 1s, like, let's see what the 4s and the 3s, like, give me some context or something, because people generally only leave a review when they're happy or they're pissed, and generally when they're pissed and not even when they're happy. And there needs to be more, like, I personally, I feed off of validation. Like, tell me that I'm doing good. That's a fucking massive boost. Like, I want to know that I am appreciated. That just is verbal. Like, also financially, that would be dope. But even just a verbal recognition, it just doesn't seem to exist. And like, people are humans that like, they have emotional needs that need to be met.
But most people want to do good and right, and when you let them know that they're doing good and right, it brings up that the boost to them. I mean, it makes a better employee.
Right? It's not
all
hard.
the way around.
Yeah, it's not hard.
No, that's absolutely correct. And, I understand that owners are, and operators are busy, but you've got to find that time to communicate clearly with your employees. Let them know when they're doing a good job. Let them know what you'd like to offer them to help them grow. And then also allowing them the opportunity to tell you where you might be lacking. Where do you need more support? What am I not doing correctly?
Let me just say this. Don't do a SWOT analysis unless you are prepared to address the weaknesses and the threats, because it destroyed a company I was at. We were under the illusion that the SWOT analysis meant things were going to change. And we were like so fucking there. And the threats and the weaknesses were so long. And like the top was morale. And that was not important to the VCs that were doing this because of a potential like acquisition. And it was like the most demoralizing shit ever to feel like they were going to change something. And you did these exercises where everyone focused on the threats and the weaknesses. We brought it out to, it was like boom in your face, and they didn't do shit. And a year later, the entire staff, but like 2 people, had quit. I mean, their sales department quit 3 times in a row, that by the 3rd time, there was no salespeople to train anyone because they fucking quit, Like,
basically just starting from the beginning. Like, what have you done for the last 3 years where you haven't even captured any of these procedures? So if you do lose your team, people know what to do.
That reminds me of one of my favorite Dr. Deming quotes. That is, if you can't explain what you do as a process, you don't know what you're doing. That fucking blew my mind. Because, I mean, it's hard. I hate writing SOPs. Like, I hate formal business documentation. I feel like I'm just not a masochist like that. But bless everyone else, you know? But, like, it was just so much more challenging to do. But I had to like stop and like break everything I did into steps, and it made me like think about it. And I think that's really important as well, is like if you can't explain it, then how the fuck are the people underneath of you supposed to know? You know?
Well, it's an investment. I mean, it takes a lot of time and it is painful. I mean, that's literally why we exist, and it's an investment. I was meeting with someone earlier this week, and she's like, well, I'm not really sure if it's worth this. And then we started looking at the fines, and we started looking at employee turnover rates, and we started looking at a bunch of other things. And she purchased our templates. She understood after our conversations the value. And I mean, we're industry disruptors. What we're doing and the price points that we're offering, I've been told several times to change that. I am here to support the small to medium sized business.
Amen.
And they deserve access to tools. And what is the point of us existing if only a few people have access to us? It's just not right. I'm sick of the cannabis tax. I'm sick of buying a computer and someone telling me what's your business do? What does it matter? What do you sell a computer for?
Do they
You know?
ask that? That's
Oh,
cool.
I've been asked that several times. I'm like, can you just give me a quote without me telling you, like what does a computer cost? What do 10 point of sale systems cost? I don't need to tell you what I do.
And Kady, I'm going to jump in, and everybody looks at fines and this and that if you don't have the proper procedures out there. But I am telling you, if you don't have the SOPs in place, you're losing money that you don't even know you're losing. I had one guy said, I can't afford cameras to keep an eye on my employees. It's like, well, yeah, because they stole 1,000 grams of concentrates. How much money is that? So I'm telling you, those SOPs need to be in place, not just for the fines, but also to save you money on the back end.
And from the start, not halfway through. Like, it's like a grow. You don't start with half of the stuff you need. You need that shit totally done and clean and optimum, because it is so hard and expensive to fix mistakes that if you're getting into cannabis, A, you're getting into compliance, and B, you don't have to do it on your own. It sucks. It's so painful. Like, I highly recommend going to someone like you to get SOPs, because it's like there's just so much. There's so much regulations and compliance per sector as well. I see people that are getting vertical licenses, and I'm like, why would you do that to yourself? That's so much
license at a time.
Yeah, like that's
unless you have a bunch of money behind you and a bunch of professionals who have operated businesses before, who've created homogenized products, and branded them and sold them, right? Those people have a step up. But I completely agree. Not ever having any background in business and then starting as a vertical operator is insanity.
It's the worst. Yeah, not recommended.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people have the best intentions that they're going to get to these SOPs, but starting off without them is like leading everybody. It's like leading the blind.
Yeah.
The blind leading the blind. And it's like, it just doesn't work that way. You have to start off with this clear, defined structure. You need to provide all of the trainings, right? I mean, I have a lot of people who, we don't need to do the OSHA training. We're not OSHA yet. I'm like, you're a business with over 50 employees. It doesn't matter what you're doing in that business. You still have to follow OSHA. We're only looked at by the health department. We don't need to follow worker protection standards. You absolutely do need to follow worker protection standards when you are cultivating a commercial product.
Absolutely.
And cannabis is a commercial consumable product. And so, yes, and me as a consumer, I want you to follow WPS. So, food handling and stuff is required, but the WPS and OSHA and lab safety, it's terrifying to me. Some of the environments I've been in and people operating this laboratory equipment.
I mean, the labs themselves that are, like Sequoia in California, their machine broke. They weren't even testing anything. and they passed everyone's pesticide test. They didn't even tell anyone they weren't even doing the testing. And what does that do? That causes a huge recall for all of these companies, and it opens you up to lawsuits and worse. And like, I think for me, the most important thing of all is consumer safety and employee safety, period. Like, period. We have the worst healthcare system in the fucking world, practically, in America. Like, no one can afford to get sick. You will ruin someone's life with medical bills. It's not fair, dude. Like, it's not cool. So I think I would love to see I'm literally going to add to Cynical Stoner. When it's time to whistleblow, like literally fucking like federal whistleblow shit, because some of these companies, they'll grow moldy weed. Their growers don't have the right protections. They're getting lung issues and stuff. Then the pandemic hit and they didn't tell their employees they had an active outbreak, and more people get sick. I mean, I had a friend have a freaking heart attack at a cultivation site out of stress because they were forging lab test results to sell moldy product to medical patients.
To medical patients. Like, this could be your grandmother. Like, what are you doing?
There comes this basement mentality of snitches get stitches. But I think we need to draw a line of when it's not snitching, when people's lives and health is at risk. And I think this is why it's important that you have this podcast with a regulator, ex-cop, like people that cannabis people are afraid of generally, because they don't want to like ruffle any feathers or anything. But it's important that I would like to know, actually, Tom, it seems that regulators don't even regulate stuff. Is it that they can only regulate so many things? Because I know people report really bad things happening and nothing seems to happen to these companies.
So I'll tell you a couple different things on that one. Is anytime you get a complaint, we took every complaint seriously. The problem is how do you prove it? How do you find it? Sometimes it's the disgruntled employee and it was 6 months ago. Well, I don't have any video after that fact. So how do you prove that side of things? Some people were putting their test samples in the microwave. How do you prove that if you can't? I mean, you can look at video for 40 hours, 40 days. How much are you actually going to see in that? So the hard part is actually finding that. Plus, the other thing, too, is some of the people that make these complaints are disgruntled employees and they got fired and they've got a history themselves. And they make up a little things back and forth. So it's not that we're not trying to find them. It's just there's only so many regulators and so many businesses out there. And where do you put your resources and time? So it's hard to catch them all.
Like, what about with labs? That I would think that would be complex because there's no standardized lab specifics anyways, that every lab needs to test the same way. So every lab has different results, and it's like, how much is the difference? But in my opinion, that's the most important area to regulate are the labs. And there are so many corrupt labs that undercut other labs. They lie, they'll give them whatever results they want. And they're the ones who are putting people at risk the most. And It seems they're unregulated. It seems like.
So I can tell you that the labs in Colorado are actually certified by the health department. So they'll actually go out there and look at their sources of how they actually do the testing on it. And we've had cases where they called it pay to play, where, hey, I need some higher potency on my, on my product here. So we'd always go to this particular lab. Well, those are things that those processes can be determined by the health department to make sure that they are correct. And then, of course, regular action will be taken against them if they're lying. But you're right. There are labs out there that it's a money thing. And we can't get all of them. We try to do the best that we can and try to make it as safe as possible for all the consumers. But once again, it's better than, getting something from some guy on the back corner, but it's still not 100%.
Oh my gosh, I have no idea what I smoked in college. It's terrifying.
Oh my God, I literally opened.
Did you look at the labeling?
Like, ugh, dude.
It was out of a trunk. You didn't even get.
I know.
That. It was like, good luck. You might feel good. You might fall asleep. I don't know what's gonna.
We don't know what it is. So at least we've got a little bit there with the testing side of it, but you're right. I mean, some of these labs, and hopefully as we go forward, we can get more and more of them to be, you know, where they're
I've
supposed to
seen
be.
huge variance in laboratories where I took the exact same samples at the same time, same day. I got an 18% on one and 8% on the other. And it was like, like
I
what
mean,
what's
and
happening here?
the biggest issue is when you're an edible company and you're formulating products and you need to have the same potency as advertised, as labeled, with homogeneity, and you can't do that properly if your lab doesn't give you the right percentage on your extract that you're formulating with in the first place. And then
And you can send it to different labs and you're going to get different results too.
And then who is held accountable? Like in California, Brass Knuckles and SC Labs work together. They had a class action lawsuit brought against them for A, not having as potent product as advertised, and B, testing positive for pesticides when it said that it was negative. So Brass Knuckles got sued, but whose fault is it if the lab is the one who said that, oh, well, we validate that this is what it says. So then the lab is part of it. And it's like, that's a huge liability to any cannabis business if you go to a shitty lab, because if they get found out and there's a recall, it impacts their customers. I think the biggest problem with California is there's not enough tax revenue coming from the industry because there's not a big enough industry to make up for the amount of enforcement that needs to be happening right now, because there's so many corrupt companies in California, but like we're very established, and California is its own corruption in itself. I don't know, dude. It's tough. I just think that labs should be the ones most regulated of all, because they're the regulators in the end. Their lab test results can prevent products from going to market, you know?
And the other problem you have with labs too is it's not an exact science. You don't test it and you get exactly the same potency each time. That's why they have that 15% variance. 15% up or 15% down. That's huge.
Yeah,
That's a lot.
totally.
And that's your typical variance when you take a Motrin or other
That's what I was going
pharmaceutical.
to say. Isn't that in the pharmaceutical industry too? Like Tylenol or anything can have that
Yep.
15% variance. That's a big.
Yep.
That's big.
That's huge. That's a huge deal. Yep.
Wow, you just can't trust anything, can you?
No more Motrin for anybody.
Yeah, cynical I will always be.
Alcohol proofs are usually pretty on point, right?
True.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we still need to figure it out. No, there's a lot of work to do, but I see a lot more, responsible owners and people like Kristen in the space and myself who are really trying to promote responsible business practices, not only for the product itself, but for the people who are creating this. And a lot of owners, we're not robots. You need to view your employees as people, and they deserve protection. I remember one of my first jobs in the first few years, I hadn't shown up to work for 2 weeks. And the owner called me and he's like, why is my highest employee not been here for 2 weeks? And I said, when the black mold is out of the office where I work, I will be happy to return to work. And I'm happy to have my lawyer write you a letter as to why I deserve the right to work somewhere that's not going to put my life at risk. But
Wow.
you selling weed to people is not worth my life. It's just not.
Totally. Amen.
So, and I felt that way several ways. I used to do deliveries. I mean, in my little Honda Fit, I'd be driving around with 80K worth of weed, and then I'd go back into the office with 80K in cash. And it's,
robbery for real, dude.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, all it had to take was somebody identifying me in a parking lot to see me carrying boxes in, coming out without it, following me around the rest of the day, and then punching me in the face and taking all my money at the end of the day. It's
a big
if
problem.
that's what I would do.
Yeah, it happens in NorCal all the time still. So
Well, in Colorado, didn't they have something, Tom, where they were calling managers and pretending to be like a hospital worker, saying that they needed to bring this much cash to the hospital.
So they did a
Right.
whole bunch of different scams, and it wasn't like the hospital worker. It was somebody that was with somebody else that says, "Hey, the boss says," they would spoof emails and spoof numbers to, "Hey, the boss says, grab X number of dollars of cash and meet me here." And they had several of them where they would bring literally thousands of dollars in a bag and go, "Okay, here it is." And we had several of those last year.
Yeah. I know there was a big sting last year
Mhm.
with a lot of that stuff going on, but it
There's
is
a lot of
scary.
those.
Yeah, it is very. Yeah.
And
I
then
would
who's
never.
responsible at the end of the day, right? For putting that employee at risk, it becomes the owner operator who's responsible for that.
It goes
Yeah.
back to communications. Like, hey, boss, seriously, you want me to bring cash to some back, parking lot? That's kind of odd.
Yeah. Or
Yeah,
in their SOP, they're like, we will never ask you to do this. In the first place, these are things to be aware of that will never happen.
but
And
that
if
makes me wonder what those owner operators have asked their employees to do.
dude, I
Right?
know
That's a normal thing that you comply with. Like, what else have you been asked to do?
I mean, I being from the California unregulated industry, my entire career was asked to do some crazy shit that was not legal, dude. Not legal, no. But I loved my job, and I was like, I'm down for the pound or whatever. What a fucking joke, But
Down
also
for the pound. I
back
love that one.
then, yeah, back then it was like you just need to make enough to get a good lawyer to have a creative enough defense, and you could probably get out of it. But once we had legalization path, there was nothing gray about it. You're either licensed or you're illegal, and that's it. And that it gets a lot sketchier at that point,
I say that a lot because I talk to people, especially with the 1 ounce thing in Colorado before the whole sweet leaf thing happened, Tom. It was you're only allowed to sell an ounce to a patient at a time, right? And they're like, well, yeah, it says at a time. It doesn't say within a 24-hour period. It doesn't say, I'm like, you know what they mean. If someone's not allowed to carry more than an ounce with them, if they don't have their medical card, why would you sell somebody more than an ounce within 5 minutes? Like, that you knew what they were meaning. Well, our interpretation is this way because it worked for them best. That's how and I'm like, no, this is black and white. You know exactly what they're saying. They lost what, 8 facilities? How many millions of dollars was that? Mess
Yep.
up?
And they went to jail.
An extra ounce. And they went to jail. Yes, a lot. So I talked to one of the managers.
From the legacy California market, I would say 85% of business owners are fucking clinical sociopaths because it takes that type of risk taker person who's not afraid of consequences to thrive in this industry. Like California,
it also took those people to get us here. Because
totally,
if people weren't going to take those risks and do this, we would not have a legal market at all. So,
I mean, I'm not hating on them. I quit cannabis when it got legalized because it fucking sucks now. And I don't want anything to do with it because I like the plant, not the bureaucracy. But I respect the safety and I see the purpose. I think it's overkill, but I see the purpose. But I don't want anything to do with it. It's not fun anymore. I'm so grateful I got to do it when it was fun, and also when I could do product development as a fucking hairdresser with a GED. Like, no food science background, never even sat at a desk before I got that job. And then I was working with food scientists, and I formulated 11 products while I was there. And I got to do all of these jobs that there's no way I would have gotten hired for now because they're run by business people. So I'm not hating by any means because it let me learn. I mean, I've had the most amazing education through trauma. Yes, lots of trauma.
Hard knock school, right?
Yeah, but I feel bad for so many cannabis enthusiasts who simply cannot get a job in this industry because they don't have the conventional background that conventional business owners that get into cannabis are seeking. And that sucks because the people who were in this industry when it was risky are the ones who got us here. And they're not getting the same support now.
Yeah.
And that's
Well, and I
unfortunate.
can't see any other industry where I could have created an opportunity for myself like I have with buildmysop.com, where I created an opportunity for myself to go from being a janitor to one of the top 4 directors for a globally recognized brand.
Yeah.
You know, especially as a woman, to do that quickly in less than a decade. There's no other industry out there, I think, that would have allowed me to accomplish as much as I have.
Yeah.
It comes with a lot of pain and
That's
stress.
it. As long
And
as you know it's going to hurt, then fuck it. Bring it on. You know?
yeah.
Just tell me first so I
No,
can be
and I've told people that. I'm like, do you know what you're getting into now that you decided to be an owner operator? I want you to know that it's got everything you think is going to take this long. Make that 4 times longer. And that's the reality of the timing with it. Make it 4 times more expensive. If you don't have $6 million that you don't care about whether or not you see it again, don't do this.
Yes, exactly.
It's not 2013. It's not 2012 anymore where it's like, oh, I'll just, sell some. No, it's you're up there with branding professionals like Nike at this point, who
Yep.
are putting hundreds of thousands of dollars into their brands.
Yeah, totally.
So, well, guys, we've come to the end of our hour. I could talk shit with you all day, Kristen.
I know, right?
I've enjoyed it.
Right? Who would have thought? In what other industry could I make a career out of talking shit? Like, you know? So, I mean, I love this industry and the ingenuity that comes with the plants, for sure.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you to all of our viewers for spending your afternoon with us. Tom, thank you for giving us your regulatory perspective. I am Kady Cravens, founder and CEO at buildmysop.com, and we look forward to seeing you guys next month on Ask the Regulator.
Bye.